Hello, and welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast, where we have real conversations about learning, leadership, and the lived experiences of nurses and healthcare professionals across the emergency spectrum. Each episode, we sit down with thought leaders, BCN certification holders, and industry experts who share their stories, their insights, and the challenges that shape their work. Our mission is simple: to amplify the voices of those making a difference every day, because your experiences drive progress, inspire others, and shape the future of nursing. We're here to honor that in every episode. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always valuable. This is BCN and Friends, and we're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to part 2 with Shannon Krebs and Marcina Doze. We're jumping right back into this layered, real-world discussion on forensic nursing, the documentation strategies that stand up long after the shift ends, and the continuing education that strengthens forensic competency without adding burnout. This episode is called Start with Believing: Doing the Right Thing for Forensic Readiness, Part 2.
I will ask this question because you did talk about education. And we are big proponents of education, continuing education, being certified, doing all of that. In your opinion, what types of continuing education do you feel best supports the competency that you're laying for forensic nurses, whether that be certifications? Obviously, you can do simulation, case review, interdisciplinary training with different members of the community, whether that be law enforcement, attorneys, etc., the DA's office. That's kind of like my first question. And I will follow it up with, how can nurse leaders and educators support staff without kind of furthering nursing burnout? Because I also feel like when anytime something comes out and everybody's like, yeah, we're going to do this. And then it's like, okay, now you have 16 modules to do. You need to come in on your day off. It always comes with like layers of responsibility and sometimes a time component. How do you kind of balance those two things out? I guess it's a loaded question, but I feel like you guys are good for it.
The first thing is we kind of made education our own here. Asking nurse leaders to give me nurses for 5 days to do the 40-hour course was just not going to happen. I mean, they all, like you said, they all are up against shortages and they need their nurses. So what we did was we made this, and I think we're really on something. We made it where it's like on Tuesdays, we're doing a combined class, this next class, A's and P's, adult and P's all in one. So it's a longer class, but we do it on Tuesdays for 6 weeks. That way they can still do their regular jobs. And what I'm finding is they're retaining more. Even when I go sit in on somebody else's class, after 40 hours, my brain is bogging. It's like going to conference and you're just getting bombarded, and you think, I want to remember this, really. So same difference. I'm finding they're retaining so much better, which is going to help them down the road. One of the other things we do for education is the DA's office gets us a courtroom. The DA comes. We have somebody that plays the defense attorney, and sheriff's office does that. And each nurse gets a time to sit on that witness stand. And so it's kind of a fun case. It's a case, we made up a whole case. A friend of mine and I sat down years ago and we made up this case. We call it the Amanda Brown case. And it is chock full of mistakes. It's just bad. So what we do is we start with one person and each person has to follow up. So if I answer a question really dumb, out of that chart because it was a mistake, and I say, oh, no, that's not what I meant. Well, are you lying now or were you lying then? What did you do? So then the next nurse has to follow up with me with that and try to figure out how to get themselves out of it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's great practice.
Yes.
And the defense attorney, they do a great job of just real world questions and how they would try to, kind of trip you up and how to defend your chart. And I think that it's invaluable training right at the end of all their didactic. They go to the courtroom and it is very dynamic. We made the news. They thought it was such a great, our local news.
And we made them dress like they were going to court. You went in business attire. I'm old, so there's some rules. No open-toed shoes. No, just all those things that because your appearance makes a difference. And so we had a lot of fun with that. And the DA's office is so wonderful to set us up again for the last day of this program. And then we bring them back over here and say, how did that make you feel? And without a doubt, every one of them said much more comfortable in that courtroom. Most people have never sat in a witness stand. Very few people get that opportunity. So anyway, that's kind of what we do, but it is a long class. It's intense. There's a lot of stuff. Many days we do 10-hour days with a working lunch. We have people coming in, human trafficking folks coming in, every entity, sheriff's department, they all come in and educate. We give them time to talk to them. Part of this whole process, I believe, Shannon and I talk about this all the time, is one thing to be the person on the other end of the phone and talking to the sheriff's department, but if I know who I'm talking to, it makes it better. And we just try to make it informational.
I think from a leadership standpoint, when it comes to, energizing your staff, we want to prevent burnout. We want to prevent burnout of the program. Like you said, we want longevity, is making those partnerships early on. Before we opened a year ago, we had worked on this for a year before we can open successfully. And one of the very first things I did, Judge Wilters, he's the one that had reached out and said that he had some seed money that he was willing to put up. And once we agreed to move forward with the program, going and seeking those resources and including my staff in that process. Before we had established in January, we had began showing up to a lot of community events, such as the candlelight vigils. They have Out of the Darkness
For suicide prevention.
And so oftentimes these are the community members or family of the community members that have been affected by this. So just keeping the interest, keeping those conversations alive. As far as burnout in nurses is, for me personally, I think I only had maybe 2 of our full-time staff that had stepped up, because that really wasn't what we wanted our program. I didn't want all of our ER nurses to become SANE nurses, because I need my ER nurses. But we needed to have nurses trained in order to do this. So, I kind of didn't want to steal from my own pool. But what I found is that they're educating their colleagues. We all have nurse friends. We all have friends that aren't in the ER. We have friends that are working in L&D and med surg, and they want to do something more for their community. And they've always been seeking this program. So now you have all these folks with all this interest who really have the time to invest, to go to an 8-hour class once a week. They can still maintain their full-time jobs while getting the education. And then there's not the requirement. We would love for them to join our program, take call, and that certainly is our intention by educating our own. But if they have that education and they decide not to join right now, they still have that education. So as they watch our program grow, they might change their mind in the future. Or maybe they logistically don't live close enough that they feel comfortable taking call. Well, as our program expands to the north and the south of our county, they might reconsider that once we know that we can bring that to area hospitals. And we have the roots for their success as well.
I think for anybody listening that doesn't have a program, I think that they should definitely try to replicate some of the things that you're doing. And, as we heard recently somebody say, R&D, rip off and duplicate, copy everything that you're doing and bring it there. But for those that can't, or those that maybe they have a pretty robust SANE program, but they're not a SANE nurse, but they just want to make sure that they document well, or they just want to make sure that they catch those people coming into the emergency department and are able to provide, resources and hope to them. What is something that you feel would help all nurses that are dealing with individuals that are impacted by some form of forensic need, whether it's an assault or an injury or sexual assault? How can some nurses change their practices to be better prepared for caring for patients that require forensic care, or even change their documentation? What are some tips that you would just give to any general nurse?
I almost go back to the same thing, start by believing. That's all you need, and know to call us. There is a place actually in the chart in the ER narrative that you contacted SANE. And so that's a very good documentation for them to use. And these nurses use it. And they don't have to justify why they did it. So that's another thing. They don't have to document a 4-page note saying, this is why I called SANE. So that makes it easy for them. And as they get to know us, that's another thing about contact. As they get to know us and our program, they feel comfortable. And so I think that's key, is get to know who your resource is. If you have a robust, you talk about people having a robust program. You have a robust program, but you're not a SANE, know who they are. Don't be afraid to call them and ask questions. I encourage every person listening to this that has any interest in forensics at all, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, whatever the case may be, call me, email me. I can talk for hours about this. and just, I just want everybody to feel that passion that we as ER nurses and as any type of nurse, I want them to feel the passion that we need to help these folks. And you're not going to make a miracle. We're not going to save the world. Many people are going to reject what we have to say, but you know what? They've heard it. And so maybe the next they will come out and admit. We have a lot of flyers that have our QR code on it. People may not take that flyer and go home because the perpetrator may get it, but everybody feels so home. And so if they hit that QR code, they have it, and it's in their phone. And so when they get to that point, they know what to do.
From a leadership point of view, equipping your ED nurses, for instance, coming from a system where we had no SANE at all. So to answer your question, Michael, what do they do when you don't have a SANE? Don't be nervous about what you're going to chart. If you chart factually to observations that you're seeing, you're never going to be wrong. Reach out to your local DA's office if you're listening to this and you're an ED leader and you want to know where to even get started. Reach out to your local law enforcement. We have Homeland Security down here and their Human Trafficking Division. They have a program called Code Blue that is nationwide, that's run through them, and that is human trafficking awareness. Look at the demographics of where you're located. Are you near a highway? Are you near a major corridor? Look at your community and see what resources already are lying there. I was very surprised that when I kind of started this endeavor, reached out to our local women's shelter, and I found that they had a SART meeting, a sexual assault response team. They had already established a SART group that they were meeting. They needed a SANE program, but they were already in communication. So for those leaders out there that are just looking at where do I even begin to sink my teeth into, is reach out and start having the conversation with your resources that are coming in contact with these folks. Find out what resources, if you're not sure what your area has, go to your local law enforcement, ask them, what are you doing when you have someone that reports sexual assault? Where are you bringing them? Is there a clinic? Is there a local hospital? Unfortunately, what I find is that there's such a lack that people don't even understand that there's a lack. Most folks really believe that if this ever happens, I go to the police department or I go to the emergency room and I'm going to get what I need. And that's just unfortunately not necessarily true. So the first thing that the ED leaders can do is find out what you have. The next thing you can do is equip your ED nurses and staff with any resources that currently exist. And if you are in a position to start having conversations with your upper administration, you need the support of your system in order, because like we said, this isn't a big money-making endeavor. It's just a huge community need everywhere. It's everywhere. We live in rural Alabama. I'm not in a major city. It happens. We live down by the beach. We have spring breakers here. We have large music festivals. We see the population of these victims rise, but we're not seeing the instances of reporting rise because of the lack of what we had once. I would like to move the needle differently, that if we do have an increased census in our area, that we do have an increased resource to meet the need of that. I think that's part of all of our responsible infrastructure building for all of our communities. Is not only the roads and the electrical and making sure that we've got schools, but we need to expand on the resources that are available or make them available.
And to add to that, what I have heard the nurses that we borrowed is we like what you say you're going to do right by the patient. I get phone calls at home and they'll say, I didn't mean to call you, but this has occurred. Some weird something. You know, if it can, it does. Okay, well, let's think about how we're going to make the patient's world better today. And that starts at the top. That starts with our leadership, because although I do make that phone call to the CNO and say, okay, I got this going on. This is what I think. But the idea that we're going to do what's right by the patient is very intriguing and to nurses, and we're going to make it happen.
I tell people that sometimes the right thing may be the more costly thing, but it doesn't mean that it still isn't the right thing. As a nurse, but also just as a fellow human being, I love hearing that the cost of someone's humanity is being weighed versus just the cost of what it may, monetarily cost to have someone on call and have someone be able to have access to resources and X, Y, and Z. And again, that number is not a small number. And I realize, like, monetarily, when a leader's looking at things and trying to be fiscally responsible, I realize, like, they do have to weigh the monetary side of things. But I think when you look at the cost to that person and that family, and then ultimately the community as a whole, it's far outweighing doing the right thing and showing up for these people and being ready, right? Because as you said, things change. Your census goes up. You have people coming into your area that aren't from there, and they're going to make that assumption. They're going to assume that I'm from a big city and I would just go to the ER. They're going to make that assumption, and how heartbreaking would it be for them to not be able to get the help that they need and that we so want to provide for them. I don't know a nurse out there that I'm connected to who doesn't want to be prepared to take care of patients to meet the need that they have, whatever that might be. And so I love to hear that you guys are equipping people, that you're practicing that kind of readiness to be prepared. And I love what you said, Shannon and Marcina, together, just talking about they may not report right away. They may not be ready. They may not be willing. They may not be at a place where they're ready to say, like, this is a situation I'm in and I need help. But you offer that to them. And I've heard stories through different presentations and heard from victims who have said, I went to the ER this many times, and then I went one more time, and that was the time that I decided to say that I needed help. And I think about the people who gave care in the previous times, and I'm like, what you did was not a failure. You actually were really just setting them up for the time when they said yes. And whatever link in the chain you are, whether you're the link that they turn down or whether you're the link where they say, no, I'm ready to get help. I'm ready to take that next step. Like, it's not a small part you're playing. You're actually playing a huge part to get them to the place where they feel like, I know where I can go when I'm ready to make that decision to get help. And so, again, everything that you're saying, I hope that anyone listening just feels the encouragement that if this is something that you're passionate about, you've got some next steps, you've got some questions to ask. And I think that nursing in general is a pretty curious group. So I guess the thing is, stay curious and keep asking questions, because that's what we need out there. And so again, thank you guys for all your responses and your thoughtfulness about how to better prepare ourselves as nurses in that kind of goal of being forensic ready. I do get the chance in our podcast often to ask some rapid fire questions. And why do we ask these questions of our guests? I'll tell you why. Because we just want to get you to know you a little bit better as a person. Obviously, we know a little bit about your bio. We know a little bit about what you're doing today. But we always like to find out, just as a person, what would you say to this? So what would you be doing if you were not in your current role? So if there was a career, a job that you were like, gosh, if I had not been a nurse, I would have tried to do, go.
I would be retired. Thank y'all very much. did about one day before I contacted them. I'll return. A friend of mine was very, very instrumental in saying, I keep seeing this on the website. And I'm like, I don't look at employment websites. I don't want to be employed. If I wasn't, I'd still be in the ER. 42 years now of ER nursing, I'd still be there. It was, it is my first love. I kind of got a rabbit hole into this. I'm very passionate. I do want to add just a minute backwards to what you said about education and this stuff. We teach a class called No SANE in Sight. What to do when there's no SANE in sight. So if anybody's out there and you're at these little hospitals that you can't have these kinds of resources, please contact us and let us come talk to you. Let us come talk to your staff about what you do when there's no SANE. I've had people tell me they didn't give patients water for 12 hours, waiting on where to send them for a SANE. Please don't do that.
I love that you're the career you'd like to try is retirement. That made me absolutely giggle. And you know what? One day, but not today. Okay, Marcina. What about you, Shannon?
I don't know if there's any other nursing that I would prefer. I think the ER is just where I was born and raised, and that's where I would be if in another lifetime. I think I can see myself maybe being some sort of an educator or a chef.
I watched, and it's not a new show. It was a few years ago, but it's called The Bear, and it's got a lot of expletives and a lot of like tension. Oh, lots of tension. It was recommended to me actually by another podcast guest, and I ended up watching it, and it was just this like, and of course it's film, right? So like they make the pressure with the music and all of that, but it just felt so intense, getting people all of their food and having it be right, and just all of this pressure that I was like, yeah, that sounds like something I want to do. And again, maybe it's because nursing in general is a pretty good pressure cooker, but I just felt like, yeah, like it just, I don't know, something about it. And it, in general, not what I would consider a chef. I can cook okay, but just something about that time behind service. Yes, chef. I was like, oh, this feels like where I should be. Again, not planning on trying that out right now, but maybe one day when Marcina's retired and Shannon, you can cook
Right.
for her. I don't know. Like it's a combination dream here. All right. I do have a question regarding a favorite or maybe just a worthwhile recommendation. What is your favorite book? Or maybe it's a quote that really inspires you. Why don't we start with you, Shannon?
Just a favorite quote, that kind of my own mantra that I say it to my employees, I say it to myself, and it's really kind of opened a lot of doors for me. And, doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do has really kind of got me a lot of places. So, although our minds want to wander, but if you can just take a beat, take a step back and do what's right with your kind heart, you're never going to be wrong.
Love it. What about you, Marcina?
Well, if I had to say a quote, it is Start by Believing. It's my favorite award I received. That just, it's the only one I hang on my wall. That came from Mariska Haggerty, who is from the Law and Order SVU fame, which I tell my patients continually, we are not Law and Order SVU, please. But Mariska was a child born of rape, and she started a foundation called Joyful Heart Foundation. You can go look it up online. It's a wonderful place, tons of resources for survivors. And when I listened to her story, and she said, I almost wasn't here. So that's her quote, is Start by Believing.
Truthfully, me and Olivia Benson have solved many, many a crime through the television. I will Law and Order SVU. If I travel, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on TV and I'm going to look for Law and Order SVU, and it's going to be there for me. It always shows up. I turn it on, I turn it up, and then I let it go. I let it play. Again, some of the things are like just terrible, terrible storylines. But there is something so comforting about just knowing that we're going to solve this together, Olivia. I've got you, you've got me. Like, we're going to make this happen. And for many years, I did not know Mariska Hargitay's story. I did not know that. And so then learning about her personal story and how that impacted not only the way that she approached the show, but also just in the way that her characters developed and using her notoriety and celebrity status to raise awareness and in personal places and things that, you know, happened to her family. That's how she got here. Again, I just like her even more. And so, yes, that show is like my travel buddy. I feel at home wherever I am if I can turn on the TV and Law and Order SVU is on. I'm sure I'm not alone. This is probably why they play reruns all the time. It's because people like me are tuning in
Right.
all over the country.
Like to actually know what's going to happen next when we live in an unpredictable world. I think it settles your mind more.
Isn't it fun that, and this I think is an ER nurse thing, we never watch anything when it comes out. You know, I'm watching Law and Order SVU or Law and Order the original NCIS from 19
years ago.
Yeah. From before the change of the century.
Yeah, I do enjoy when people recommend new shows, but I can honest to God tell you, I'm not watching it until there's been a few seasons out and until like we've reached a stopping point of like they're not about to do some big character shift or something. Like I have to have, and I guess
Needs
that's
to be
why.
vetted. Yeah, a show needs to be vetted for that 2 or 3 season. Let me hear about it first before I commit.
I wholeheartedly
I
agree
was
with
a night shift nurse. So on my nights off, you didn't sleep. And so you take the remote control, you go in the guest room and you click. You know, and so you start watching these programs from God knows when.
There is definitely some comfort in it for sure. I do have to ask. I mean, we could stay on Law and Order SVU forever, honestly, but we can't. We have a few more questions to ask. Okay, so I say this almost every time. I hope that one day nurses and healthcare professionals are just so good at self-care that we don't even have to talk about it. We're not there yet. So I like to ask people, hey, is there a self-care go-to or a way that helps you reset personally so that way you can continue to strive and do all of the hard work that you're doing?
First, biggest priority for me is no matter what's going on at work is having your work-life balance and make that a priority first. You may not know what you want to do on your off time, but you need to make a priority that you're off. I don't really like to approve my nurses to work more than 5 or 6 days in a row because we know what that does to our brains. For me personally, I have a very large family at the house. So our work-life balance is very, very full. I always like to have a trip on my calendar, whether it's 3 months out, 4 months out. You know, you got to find that light at the end of the tunnel. We travel a lot. And then again, go back to cooking. That's my love language. I will cook for you. No one in my circle will ever go hungry. We might be broke, but we're not hungry. I think making a priority, like you said, for yourself to have that time off. You may not always have some great hobby or whatnot, but being away from the workplace, clearing your mind, and prioritizing the things that are important always. Every Sunday at my house for 25 years, everyone knows all doors are open. Come one, come all, because you're getting fed.
That's right. For me, I like to go to the woods. I go camping. We have horses. That's my go-to. Nothing clears your mind like a little wet blanket time. And my husband tells me we may ride several miles and not say a word. And he said it's the only time in the world that I'm not chattering about something. Yeah. Complaining or telling a story, you know, something. But that's kind of my thing. I said at the campsite, we have a lot of people that we've gotten to know people at the campsite. So they all show up at my trailer and we just kind of hang out. The dogs, the people. If we're not at the campground, I'm cooking in the pan. 2011, we lost a son. And that is my go-to time to see that they're all safe. And Mama cooks and they eat. And I can assure you it's not quite. We got we're up to 5 great-grandchildren. So we're all starting the cycle of little kids again. You know, the grandbabies grew up and it was kind of nice to see everybody, but it was controlled. Now it's like being in the ER, it's controlled chaos. So, but that's my thing. Make sure that I can see them, I can put the eyes. when I teach that class, SANE in sight, my last picture is a picture of my husband and I, and all the grandchildren and children. And there's, at that point, when I took that picture, there was like 28 of us. And so I end the program, you can believe this, I shut my mouth, and I end the program by saying, I don't like to think about this, but per statistics, 5 of those people have been successful. And then I'll shut up. You would be surprised at how many people show up and say, where do I go?
That's powerful. Well, if our audience wants to reach out to you, which, like I said, you've already encouraged people to do, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
The best way to get a hold of me is usually through my work email. Holly probably attach that. So my work email, I am on Facebook, but if you have any questions, just message me. I'm really, really good about answering questions, and I really want to grow my knowledge. So if you have any other pointers that you can send my way as well, please communicate.
I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, but yeah, if they have any questions, any suggestions, anything you think we said that sounds like this is just not right, give me a ring. Let's talk about it. I'm a big proponent of talking in person or on the phone instead of trying to. I find out that people email you and you send a response back and they don't understand it. It's kind of like texting. My kids want to text me all day long. I'm like, can you please just call me? And I just told my age, didn't I? And so I say that to nurses, please call me, contact me or email me and we'll make a time to talk. And let me answer your questions. Let me assure you. And if you are a victim and you're listening to this podcast and you don't know what to do, get in touch with me.
Thank you both for just being such a great resource, but then also saying like, hey, if you've got suggestions or maybe like lessons for us, I mean, I love that it's like an exchange. So I will definitely be listing both of your work emails as a primary contact for people to get in touch with you, and then they can reach out any which way. Thank you guys both for giving that resource out.
Thank you for inviting us, Holly. It's special.
Yeah, it's been great chatting with both of you, and Marcina and Shannon. I told Holly recently, we were talking about just the podcast and the guests, and we always bring up the fact that there are so many awesome nurses out there doing such incredible things. And it's just been great to talk to both of you, and not only to hear what you're doing, but to just see how passionate you are talking about it and the joy that it brings you to know that you're making a big impact in your community and that impact is spreading further and further across that region of Alabama and hopefully more into the state and then other states. And just excited to listen to you and see where these things can go. And as you both have mentioned multiple times, it's a huge need. Even in areas that do have established programs, I don't feel like there's even enough nurses to handle the volume that's happening. And so to see the need continue to grow and grow, it just bears talking about it in the emergency nursing community to try to foster more growth in nurses to help meet that need. So thank you for what you're doing and all that you've shared. And we're looking forward to chatting more with you now that we have your emails and all your ways to contact you, chatting more with you about other ideas to share the education and grow this thing and help fight against such a big problem across the country.
It's been an honor. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, Marcina and Shannon, I want to thank you both for spending time with us on BCN and Friends. You leave us with a powerful reminder that forensic nursing isn't a specialty reserved for a few. It's a mindset that every nurse can carry into practice. From recognizing subtle red flags to building systems that protect both patients and providers, this conversation highlights how preparation, documentation, and advocacy truly matter. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that this episode empowers anyone listening to approach every patient encounter with confidence, curiosity, and a forensic readiness. That's a wrap for this episode of BCN and Friends. Don't miss what's next. You can subscribe, share, and join the conversation by scanning the QR code for Learn updates in this episode blog. You got a topic you'd like us to cover, you can drop us a line at bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs with Michael Dexter, and we're proud to celebrate your dedication to nursing across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and we're out.